Hi, this is Chris Riggins with Sanctuary Family Farms. I am married to Elisa Riggins and have two wonderful daughters, Michaela and Rebecca. Michaela is 21 years old and Rebecca is 15. I manage a lot of the projects on the farm, most specifically projects in the garden. I live in a house full of girls. I'm outnumbered 3-1. One of the most difficult things for me to deal with, especially over the past 3 months of Christmas holidays, is what movies do we watch. It seems that there is always a Hallmark, now a Great American Family, Christmas show being watched. Now don't get me wrong, there's nothing specifically wrong with these shows, but they are not usually my cup of tea. And I am usually outvoted, especially if they start the show before I get in the house. These shows always pull at the heartstrings and make you wish for something that you either have never experienced or would like to experience again. They have done a masterful job of knowing where a girl's heart is and going after it. Now, the opposite side of the movies I pick but seldom get to watch, movies like Band of Brothers, Saving Private Ryan, the ultimate Christmas movie, Die Hard. Just kidding on that last one. These are movies of warriors doing the impossible. But just like the girls' side, these are shows that pull at my heartstrings and make me wish for an experience that I've never had or would like to experience again. The one common thing with both these genres is that they know the audience's heart. God has been working in me lately over my own heart, where it is and what does it want. Many times it is in the right place, but a lot of times it is selfish, narcissistic, jealous, and self-centered. I struggle with not getting what I want the way I want it. Just like what draws us to these movies, I either want an experience that I have never had or want to experience something again. It is where my heart is, and when I don't get what my heart wants, I pout, I complain, I get moody, I distance myself. Now, these are all traits that I would never proclaim as positive or something I would want to continue, but yet I do. Romans 7:18 through 20. This is why God is having me examine my own heart. King David was an extraordinary man in the Bible. He did some remarkable things. I can guarantee you that if The Slaying of Goliath was a movie, I would be ready with my popcorn. Yet again, this is because that story pulls at my heartstring. Because of that, I began to study David and who he was. David was a regular guy, and by some accounts, maybe even a little below average in some ways. The overcoming of difficult situations is what always made David stand out and make me say, man, I want to do that. Although the more I study, the more I began to understand there was more to the story than just overcoming. There was a secret to his success. And when he deviated from that, it was disastrous. Many might say that the secret that David knew his own heart and went after it, when in actuality, the secret to his success was the opposite. The heart he went after was God's. Many times in the stories of David, it says he was a man after God's own heart. And that is absolutely, without a doubt, the secret to his success. The one time that he gave in to his own heart, it ended up in him sending Uriah into battle to die for his own desires. That ultimately cost him the opportunity to build the temple. So, what does it mean to be a man after God's own heart? For me, it means you seek what he wants, his desires, and his plan. How is that done? Yet again, David is a great example. Every time before David went into battle, he asked God what he wanted him to do, and God would answer him. It was not always what was in David's heart. The time he snuck into the cave where Saul was sleeping and God told him not to kill Saul, but to only cut a piece of his garment and take it, David had the opportunity to destroy the one seeking to destroy him. But he sought God's heart, not his own. Another time he asked God if he was to go into battle, and God told him to wait. When he heard the rustling of the mulberry tree, then go. He sought God's heart, yet once again was successful. Why was I taken down this path? And how was this revealed to me, you might ask? Well, I was taken down this path because I spend way too much time worrying about what I want, what my desires are, or how am I going to solve something. These should not be my worries. These should not be my stress. These should not be my concerns. I recently had the opportunity to follow my own heart or seek God's heart. I did not want to do what God had placed in front of me. We at Sanctuary Family Farms were given the opportunity to go Christmas caroling. Not where my heart was. I did not have the time. I was tired, and frankly, I sing like a frog with the flu. Yeah, picture that. But it was not about where my heart was. It was about where God's heart was. It turned out to be a fantastic experience for me, where I could see how God truly touched these people through us. It was, as Tammy Gibbs said, a hallmark moment. So, with all these examples and experiences, it shows me that I should have one simple concern, and everything come down to one question. Am I a man after God's own heart?
So, Chris, I think what you said is germane to all men. But let me ask you a question just to see if I'm in the same place. When you buy something and it's there and you see the picture on the outside, do you have an inclination to want to follow the instructions?
Of course I don't. My first inclination is to put it all together, do it wrong, then take it apart, and then read the instructions after I failed probably multiple times.
Why do you think as men, I agree with you 100%, why do you think we as men have this propensity to go, no, I don't want anybody telling me how to do it?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. I don't want anybody telling me what to do. And I don't care what they know, what experience they've had, or if they're the expert in that field or not. I generally have a tendency to think I know better.
Okay. You know, I've put together a lot of things and realized that the sequence of them going together was very important.
Well, I've put together many of things and got down to everything being together. And the one part that was left over that I had to put in forced me to take the whole thing back apart to get that one part back in so it would fit together.
Yes, I have had the same experience. So, do you think we ever look at God as instructions or the Bible as instructions? And sometimes we say, God, I don't need your instructions. I can do this myself. I mean, like David went in the cave when he had Saul at his hands, and he's like, hey, I can finish this right now, and I was already anointed king, so I will be king.
Of course, I think we do. I think what we do a lot of times is we depend upon our own logic and our own reasoning. And when you read through the Bible and look at the stories that are in the Bible of people like David and stuff like that, some of the things that God wanted those people to do didn't really make sense, not from a logic point of view. I mean, you have your enemy at the palm of your hands. He's vulnerable. It's your opportunity to fix the problem. You can fix it right here, right now, and be done with it. But that wasn't God's plan. It wasn't what he wanted. And so David had to humble himself and humble his own ego in order to be able to accomplish what God wanted. I can't tell you what the story would be had it been opposite and David destroyed Saul exactly, but I'm pretty sure it would have been disastrous is probably what it would have been.
I can tell you what would have been. It would have been that David would have never been in a united kingdom because Saul was from the northern 10 tribes and David was from Judah. And so they would have never united because they would always resented David for killing Saul. And it wouldn't have worked. So I know we choose David as a man because he's a mighty warrior. What do you think about Christ? What do you think, Christ? Do you readily account him among the brave men of Joshua and Moses and David? Do you count him that way, or is he a different creature?
Oh, no, 100%. Absolutely. Going back to my logic and reasoning thing, there's a lot of things that Jesus did when he was walking on the earth that didn't really exactly make sense. It was to the people of that time, it absolutely didn't make sense. I mean, There's the story of the adulterer that was caught in adultery, and it was Mary Magdalene is who it was, and the Pharisees wanted her stoned, and brought her to Jesus for him to condone her being stoned, and his statement was, whichever one of you are without sin, cast the first stone. And long story short, come to the end of it, there was nobody else standing there but Mary Magdalene, when none of them could be the first one to cast the first stone. And he simply told her, go and sin no more. And so that, from a rational, logical reasoning through it, that didn't always make sense, especially when the law of the time was something completely different. So being able to stand up and stand out on that principle of where Jesus was, I mean, it definitely makes him a warrior. He stood up against the Pharisees of the time. That was the ruling class. That was the elite, the cream of the crop, so of the social empire of that time. And he stood toe to toe with them and stood up against them.
You know, you think about it, Mary Magdalene became one of his greatest followers and one of his most ardent followers. The one that went after he was crucified, she was the first one to go into the garden seeking to anoint his body with oil. And you think he could have killed Mary Magdalene and ended the law, and she would have died a sinner, a prostitute. Rather than that, his actions led to her redemption, and she became a powerful force of the church. So, Jesus said, I've come to do the will of my Father, which says he had a pattern. Mm-hmm. He had something he had to do, and God gave him the instructions on what to do. Now, he didn't resent it. He didn't resent it like we resent it. I'm going to do it my way. I'm smarter than that. How dare anybody tell me how to put this together? It's obvious. So how do we conform our lives to be like him so that we say, but Jesus is the guy who built it, and he's the guy who knows how to rebuild my life. I mean, if he created my life, who else knows how to put it together if he gives me the design for it?
Absolutely. I mean, you take a look at the story you were talking about with Mary Magdalene. You can see after the fact, you can see the transition of that story from beginning to end, and you see, oh, there was the purpose. That's why he didn't at the end. I think that's what the person who writes the instructions or directions or whatever you want to call it, that's what they know. He knows the beginning from the end. When we're just at the beginning at that time, and we're using our logic at that time to say, I'm going to solve this problem right here, but we don't see what goes on further down the line. Just like I was saying, when you put something together and you get it all together and you think, I've got it, and you got that one last piece that won't fit in because you didn't do it the way it was supposed to be done from the beginning. And so when you get to the end, it's all messed up. When if you'd have put that piece in the place and followed the instructions from the beginning, it would have been complete, whole, and perfect at the end.
So basically, you could say that our sense of obedience to the instruction God gives us may be better than feigning our brilliance at thinking we know better than anybody how to put it together.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. And you take a look at the story of Jesus. I mean, just in and of itself. I mean, he had to. In my blog, I talk about being a man after God's own heart, and he absolutely was. I mean, I come to do the will of the Father. That's exactly what he's saying. I'm doing his. I'm following his heart. I want to know what his heart is, and that's what I'm going to do. I mean, all the way up to the point of being crucified on the cross. I mean, I mean, anybody who says, "Oh, I can do that," is living in la la land, in my opinion. And so, I mean, he completely removed himself from the situation, removed his own logic, his own reasoning, his own rationality, his own sense of ego, his own sense of what's right, what's wrong, and said, I may not see it, I may not exactly understand it, but I'm going to do the will of the Father.
Yeah, And you think in some ways it makes it so obvious if we take our children and say, here, let me show you how to shoot this gun, instead of saying, here, take this and find out for yourself how it works. Or better still, here, take it apart and put it back together.
Absolutely. I mean, kids are a great example of, well, not only humility, but a lot of other things. But they're a perfect example of seeing it from the other end, and as a parent having the experience, gone through the situation, seeing what it looks like on the other side, and then when you tell your kid, do it this way, and they look at you and say, no, I got it. And then you're like, we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. And I think God does the same thing with us too. He says, here, do it this way. And we're like, no, we got it. And he's like, we'll see.
Just keep the plans close.
Yes.
You're going to have to use them again.
You'll be back. You'll come back for the instructions later.
Great. I think that's a great analogy, and I think it's a great blog. I think that's so true of all of us. We can hit those things if we just look and say, yeah, that's me. And it's common. I think it's common to every man. I've not seen a man who was, or no, when I call a man, but I've not seen a man who would not be like, no, I can do it. I can do it myself. I can. But you know what? I hate to say this, but I think there's a lot of women like that too.
Oh, I think it's human. It's human nature.
Yes.
And not only human nature, I think it's socially taught to us to be independent.
Yes.
And I don't think God's ever created this world for us to be independent.
No, I think the order is dependent and then codependent.
Right.
In other words, I don't mean that's a bad term.
Right.
I mean, it's a good term. We rely on one another. God relies, we rely on God. God works with us. I think that's the way it's supposed to be.
100%.
Okay. Thanks much, Chris. I'm waiting for the next blog.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Hey y'all, thanks for joining us for Around the Supper Table. At Sanctuary Family Farms, we want to be real. Whether that's through our blogs, daily verses, or even Nana's recipes, we want to share the messages that God has laid on each of our hearts. If you liked what you heard today or want to get in touch with us, you can find us on Facebook and YouTube at Sanctuary Family Farms or our website at www.sanctuaryfamilyfarms.com, where we share our recipes and blogs and sell farm fresh beef and pork. We can't wait for you to join us again for next week's episode.